Chosen one. Oh, you made it here? Good. Because not everyone does. Not everyone survives what you've survived. Not everyone keeps standing after being counted out, overlooked, or betrayed. But you're still here. And that's exactly why they can't stop watching. This isn't just another moment. This is your arrival. You're not here by accident, and you're not ordinary. You carry something they can't replicate, something they can't deny. And deep down, they know it. Let's make one thing clear. Everything they threw at you, everything they tried to bury you under, only woke up the parts of you they were never ready to see. Every ounce of rejection, every closed door, every whisper behind your back, all it did was sharpen you, elevate you, turn you into someone even you are still getting to know. So take a breath. Look around. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. You already are the proof, walking, breathing evidence that resilience looks good on you. Welcome to your moment. You've earned it. You fought for it. And now, you get to wear it like a crown. So hold your head high, because the same people who try to dim you are about to need sunglasses just to stand in your light. Let's get into it, looking for purpose and peace. Hit subscribe and start the journey. They think the silence has swallowed you. That distance has drained you of strength. To them, shutting you out is a final blow, an erasure. But what they can't fathom is that retreat births something they could never predict. As they celebrate what they think is your collapse, you are already shaping into someone they would never be ready to face. When the noise fades, the air clears, and the weight of their judgment lifts, a quiet brilliance begins to take root inside you. While they remain tangled in their familiar patterns, you step into a private forge, where your edges are sharpened and your depths uncovered. What they intended as exile becomes your secret laboratory, where understanding deepens and courage hardens into something irreversible. The space they abandoned becomes a place you claim for yourself, free of applause, free of pretense, free of their shallow affirmations. They see your stillness and assume defeat, unaware that every breath you take in solitude layers more foundation beneath you, brick by unseen brick. And when you return, it isn't loud or desperate. It's undeniable, measured, refined, unshakable. They thought they had extinguished you, but instead they are left stunned, watching you emerge in a way they can neither diminish nor deny. What they tried to shut out now stands before them, untouchable. And all they can do is watch as you grow beyond the edges of their imagination, into spaces they never believed you'd reach without them. To them, your absence was your undoing, but in truth, it was your becoming. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. They assume your removal will splinter everything. In their eyes, they hold the structure together, and your exit will surely leave you fractured and lost. What escapes them is this. The weight was never on their shoulders. It was always on yours. You were never leaning into them. They were quietly leaning into you. The moment you step away, the air shifts. The atmosphere dulls. The rhythm falters. While they believed themselves to be the anchor, it was you keeping the tide steady all along. Without your quiet guidance, everything begins to feel hollow. Conversations lose their spark, plans unravel, and even their laughter rings thinner. They mistook their spotlight for power, not realizing you've been orchestrating the harmony from the shadows. Without your steady presence, the scaffolding they rely on begins to creak. But you don't fall because you were never propped up by them. You rise lighter, clearer, liberated from the invisible load of holding together what they took for granted. Now they confront the truth. Your absence is louder than your presence ever needed to be. They scramble to replicate what you gave so effortlessly. Your clarity, your calm, your quiet strength. But it slips through their hands because it was never theirs to begin with. Without you, the balance they assumed was theirs collapses. And while they wrestle with that emptiness, you ascend to even greater heights, proving you were never just a piece of the whole. You were the ground it all stood on. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. They believe turning their backs wounds you beyond repair, that leaving you stranded will fracture your spirit. What they aim for is not mere distance, but dismantling, crafted coldly, intended to make you unravel. Their retreat is not silence. It is a strategy meant to unseat your confidence and confuse your heart. What they fail to grasp is that separation does not scatter you. It composes you. Their departure is meant to sting, to hollow you out. Yet instead, it makes room for revelations they hoped you'd never find. The vacancy they create fills with understanding they can't imagine. You begin to notice details they blind you to. Your thoughts sharpen. Your inner rhythm returns. What they thought would send you crawling back instead gives you air to stand taller. In the stillness, you stop bending toward their whims and start tracing your own contours. You discover that calm isn't something handed to you by company. It grows quietly when you're alone with your honesty. In this quiet, you confront the truth they tried to cover. Their exit speaks more about them than it ever could about you. It uncovers their fragility, their need to dominate, their fear of being seen for what they are. And you emerge from their calculated distance changed, not bitter, not hollow, but whole. Now you move through doors you once thought were locked, no longer checking the doorway to see if they're following. They can no longer reach the person you've become because you've outgrown the corners they left you in. Their greatest miscalculation was thinking their leaving would erase you when in fact, it freed you to become someone beyond their grasp. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. They imagine that closing ranks and surrounding themselves with agreeable faces protects them. They retreat into tightly knit groups that echo back the same unchallenged ideas, mistaking comfort for wisdom. The chatter grows louder, but never deeper, like ripples circling the same stagnant pool. While they are preoccupied validating each other, you are pushed into silence, but that silence tunes you to subtleties they can't perceive. Alone, you hear the unspoken patterns beneath the noise. Their crowded rooms drown nuance. Your solitude sharpens it. In the space they see as exile, your thoughts grow distinct. You begin speaking from a place they've never dared to reach. Words that don't just fill air, but shift it. They stay trapped in a cycle of shallow talk, fixated on appearances and control, while you root yourself in depth, speaking from something lived, not rehearsed. To them, numbers equal strength, volume equals authority. To you, precision carries more weight than shouting. You have no interest in impressing. You're intent on leaving a mark. That's why your presence alters the room without effort. Your words linger in minds that once dismissed you, because they carry something rare, substance that cuts through their haze. Even when they don't admit it, they hear you. They replay what you said in the quiet moments when their chorus goes silent. While they spin endlessly inside their safe circle, you become the one voice that disrupts the loop, reminding them what it feels like to encounter truth. They assume withholding affection will fracture your resolve, believing that retreating into coldness will leave you scrambling for scraps of their approval. In their mind, their absence should hollow you out, make you smaller, more desperate to earn their fleeting warmth again. What they never calculate is this. You stop craving what no longer sustains you. You start noticing how meager their offerings have always been. Empty gestures scattered just to keep you dependent. You realize how much of what they called love was simply leverage. How much of what they offered was designed to keep you unsteady. When they pull away, expecting collapse, they don't expect you to awaken to the truth. Their withdrawal opens your eyes to how little they actually gave and how much you already carry. That ache they wanted to cultivate becomes clarity. You no longer mistake inconsistency for care. You begin to see that real connection doesn't twist you into someone else, doesn't force you to earn tenderness with silence and sacrifice. It simply exists without agenda. Their absence strips the illusion bare. You are not fragile. You have simply been fed illusions of intimacy that leave you empty. The balance shifts quietly. You stop waiting at the door for validation and start moving through it. Their presence is no longer a reward. It becomes irrelevant. They cannot understand how you stand taller without them, how you glow without grasping for what they withhold. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. They thought they could keep you tethered by rationing affection, but all they really did was teach you how to stop starving. And once you taste wholeness, you refuse to return to the table they once controlled. They convince themselves that cutting you out erases your impact. They whisper to one another as though ignoring you rewrites history, as though your influence will dissolve the moment they turn away. Slowly, they stop acknowledging you, omit your name, pretend the memories of you fade. What they fail to see is this. In trying to erase you, they diminish themselves. They assume removing you keeps their world intact, but instead, it hollows their story. Their quiet exclusion is not a triumph, it's a fracture. They imagine you were just a fleeting note in their melody, not realizing you composed the rhythm they now stumble through. As they circle in on themselves, clinging to what's familiar, they strip away the only presence that gave depth to the room. Without you, everything flattens. Conversations loop on themselves, energy dulls, and the air thickens with repetition. They perform the motions, but without meaning, trying to convince themselves nothing's changed while the emptiness grows louder. You continue forward, writing a narrative they no longer understand. They, on the other hand, remain trapped in a stale chapter, flipping the same pages as if doing so could conjure something new. Even when they glance back, they realize you no longer fit into the frame they abandoned. You've grown beyond what they can grasp, beyond what their circle can contain. They wanted you erased, but instead they made themselves irrelevant, turning their own story into a hollow echo of what it could have been had they not pushed away the one who carried its weight. Now they sit in their endless loop, pretending the story still matters without you, unable to admit that removing you didn't end your chapter, it ended theirs. They believe shutting you out slows your rise. They assume removing themselves from your path leaves you stranded, hesitant, unsteady. But what they fail to see is that separation often clears the stage for what was always meant to unfold. Creation rarely happens in crowded places. Transformation prefers the quiet. As they stand back, thinking they've imposed punishment, you're already stepping into preparation. The hush they orchestrate around you becomes a sanctuary where new vision takes shape. What they see as distance is actually alignment, the clearing away of noise, so you can finally decipher the signals meant for you alone. This is not exile. This is a summons. You're drawn aside not because you're unworthy, but because the next chapter demands a clarity only solitude can bring. They imagine stripping away their presence disrupts your momentum, but it actually removes obstacles they never knew they were. While they whisper about your disappearance, you're listening to instructions that would never reach you in their company. Without their chatter and chaos, you can finally move with purpose rather than reaction. Now they look on in disbelief, unsure how someone they tried to quiet now stands taller than ever. They misread your absence as failure when it was always preparation. The stillness they crafted to break you has instead remade you into someone unshakable. What they call isolation is your awakening. What they call rejection is your refinement. They mistake their withdrawal as power, not realizing they simply cleared the way for you to step fully into your own. What they designed as an ending became the doorway to your revolution. They decide you shine too steadily, too clearly, too honestly, and it unsettles them. So they chip away, small at first, snide remarks, dismissive glances, strategic silences. Then they escalate, pushing you out altogether, hoping your glow fades in their absence. What they fail to understand is that your brightness was never there to compete, but to reveal. Your presence doesn't overshadow, it illuminates. You bring coherence where there's confusion, balance where there's discord, and clarity where there are hidden motives. They don't want to elevate themselves. They just want to see you dim, so their own shortcomings feel less sharp in comparison. But once they push you aside, the illusions they built around themselves start to crumble. Suddenly, what you quietly held together begins to unravel. Unspoken tensions surface, petty conflicts escalate, and the calm they once leaned on is gone. Without you, the cracks are impossible to ignore. The dynamic becomes brittle, the conversations lose their depth, and the unity they flaunted proves hollow. Your steadiness masked their chaos. Your presence softened their rough edges. You carried what they resented you for, and now they're left exposed. As they watch you continue forward, they're left sitting in the mess they tried to hide, unable to put it back together. The room you once lit now feels smaller, colder, less alive. They thought silencing you would make you vanish, but instead it uncovered everything they tried to bury. They're left circling their own shadows while your light, untouched, finds new places to shine, far beyond their reach. They tell themselves you've grown too bold, too assured, too certain of your place, and that it needs to be corrected. In their minds, your confidence must be trimmed because it reminds them of what they lack. They whisper that you've lost perspective, but what they really mean is you stop bending to make them feel bigger. You no longer fold to fit into their comfort zones, and that unsettles them. They retreat, withdraw kindness, quietly conspire as though deputized to teach you humility. They speak as if entrusted with the task of cutting you down to size, believing it's their duty to dim what they cannot understand. But they fail to notice the contradiction in their mission. They imagine themselves noble for policing your radiance, but it reveals only how fragile their own self-worth has become. They presume your strength is arrogance because it outshines their own unspoken doubts. They name your clarity pride because it exposes their confusion. They name your steadiness defiance because it highlights their instability. The more they try to frame your confidence as a flaw, the more their intentions unravel under the weight of their insecurity. What they really want is not to make you better, but to shrink you into something they can tolerate. And yet, the harder they press, the clearer it becomes that their attempts say more about them than you. You continue to ascend without their permission, no longer seeking approval they can't even grant themselves. The lesson they try to impose ends up exposing the fragility behind their judgment. They don't humble you, they reveal themselves. They assume that withdrawing their support leaves you unmoored, as if their presence anchors your direction. They think you'll lose your way in the silence they create, convinced your footing depends on their approval. But what they can't see is that the quiet they design opens a kind of clarity they've never touched. The noise of their opinions, the constant demand to adjust yourself to their expectations, it all dissipates. You realize how much of yourself was buried under their gaze, how much energy was wasted bending around their fragile egos. Alone, you start to recognize what was hidden in plain sight, how little they poured back into you, how often you carried more than you received, and how distorted their version of you had become. In the absence of their chatter, your own voice grows sharper. You stop filtering your choices through their imagined rules. You stop mistaking their attention for belonging. What unsettles them most is that you no longer hesitate. The person they left behind in confusion evolves into someone who walks with intent, speaks with certainty, and acts without asking. They plan to leave you diminished, but instead they set in motion a clarity so vivid it redefines everything, past and present. Now you move through life untethered, seeing with eyes that no longer cloud at the sight of their disapproval. You understand that their exit didn't shatter you. It stripped away illusions they hoped you'd never see. They thought removing themselves would break you open. Instead, it cleared the fog. And in that clear light, even they become transparent, no longer the giants you once thought they were. They assume the absence of noise will erase your impact. They believe if they turn their backs, stop acknowledging you, stop clapping, your steps will falter. They imagine their silence drowns out your presence. What they can't comprehend is that your essence was never fueled by their reaction. You don't move to be admired. You move because your soul has rhythm they can't mute. When they withdraw, you stop explaining and start embodying. You stop performing and simply exist in a way that cannot be ignored. The calm they mistake for defeat becomes the proof of what they try to deny. Your resilience becomes a language all its own, wordless yet undeniable. Your progress, your composure, your quiet certainty begins filling spaces they thought they cleared of you. They avert their eyes, yet still notice. They pretend not to care, yet still watch. Every stride you take challenges their assumptions. Every breath of peace you exude confronts their doubts. You do not justify. You do not plead. You do not retaliate. You simply continue, and that disarms them more than any argument ever could. The life you create, unbothered and unshaken, carries more weight than any noise they muster. And though they try to look away, your presence lingers, not because you shout, but because your very being tells a truth they can't escape. They thought ignoring you would erase your message. Instead, it sharpened it. They believed walking away would weaken your story. Instead, it wrote you into theirs more powerfully than before. They expect their exit to cut you down, as if their absence could make you disappear. Their plan is to make you feel diminished, small enough to doubt yourself, hollow enough to crave what they withheld. But their walking away doesn't break you, it unlocks you. You are not discarded. You are liberated. As the grip of their presence loosens, the tension inside you begins to dissolve. Without their gaze, you stop shrinking yourself to fit their approval. Without their constant intrusion, you finally meet yourself. Gradually, you realize how much of your energy was spent tiptoeing around their moods, compensating for their coldness, carrying the weight of their judgment. In the quiet they leave behind, something dormant awakens. Your own clarity. The pressure to meet impossible expectations lifts. The voice inside you, once buried under the noise of their discontent, rises unafraid. Their departure becomes your restoration. The anxiety they injected into your body releases. The endless loop of doubt they planted is silenced. You are not fragile. You are simply recovering from their hold. You are not excessive. You are simply feeling without their distortion. You were never impossible to love. You were simply surviving someone who didn't know how. What they intended as harm opens a door you never dared touch. You grieve what you thought you lost, but find what you didn't know was missing. Your wholeness, your strength, your dignity. They don't leave to save you, but that's what happens anyway. What they mean as punishment turns into the very thing that leads you home. You no longer carry anger toward them, just a quiet gratitude for the freedom their absence gave you. They smirk and trade stories about you, convinced your quiet disappearance proves their point. They fill rooms with whispers, amused by what they assume is your downfall, certain that stepping away means you've collapsed. They don't see what's actually unfolding. While they mock what they think is stagnation, you're quietly forming into someone they could never predict. Every moment in solitude, every unseen choice, every hidden scar becomes part of a foundation they cannot comprehend. You don't crumble, you consolidate. While they keep themselves entertained, you do the work they've never had the courage to face. Their laughter drowns out their own discomfort with your evolution, because it's easier to belittle than to confront what they envy. You grow in ways they can't measure, deeper, sharper, calmer. You begin moving differently, carrying a presence they don't recognize. Your silence becomes more disruptive than anything you could have said. The same voices that once ridiculed now stumble when they see you. The change is undeniable, and it unsettles them because they can no longer place you in the box they built. What once seemed harmless to them now burns, watching you become untouchable while they remain trapped in their sameness. You're no longer someone they can name, define, or reduce. It all happens while they laugh, too distracted to realize they're witnessing the very transformation they tried to prevent. And when the laughter stops, what remains is their awareness that you've become someone beyond their reach. They inch back into your orbit, testing boundaries they once ignored. One by one, they reach out, tiny gestures, lukewarm words, as if trying to slip unnoticed into a space that no longer exists. They feel the distance now, not because they've grown, but because your presence no longer bends for them. What they once took for granted has changed shape entirely. They never expected your silence to hold its ground. They assumed you'd wait for them to return, unaware that you'd already outgrown the need for their attention. What unsettles them most is the ease in your detachment. They search for remnants of the person who craved their approval, only to find someone who no longer waits to be understood. You release the weight of needing explanations, stop offering access to what they dismissed, and let go of the need for closure from people who never brought clarity. The power you carry now isn't bitterness, it's neutrality. You don't shrink, but you don't perform either. You stop trying to fit into stories you've outlived. They circle back, hoping to pick up where they left you, but that version is gone. What they thought would always be within reach has vanished without fanfare. You no longer occupy rooms that require you to justify your presence. You move differently now, more certain, more aligned, more at peace. The opportunity they once assumed would stay open has quietly shut, not in anger, but in understanding that your growth no longer fits their expectations. They're left to wrestle with their regret while you move forward unbothered. They thought severing ties would diminish you, but it only revealed the strength you'd been cultivating all along. What they tried to end became the very thing that propelled you. Their absence became the ground where your purpose rooted itself and thrived.